Listen to me now, for the hour is closer than you think, and I have not come to whisper idle words into an empty night. I have come because midnight is approaching, and before the last stroke falls, before the darkness reaches its deepest point, there is something being carried across the curtain toward you, something forged in fire that no human hand could ever hold. I'm speaking to you, yes, to you, the man of the hour, the one who thought no one above was watching, the one who lay down last night believing the silence of the hills was proof that the hills had forgotten your name. It has not. I know the exact number of hours you have spent awake, staring at a ceiling you could not see, asking whether any of it meant anything at all. I know the weight you carry in your chest that you have never named out loud because naming it would make it real, and you have already survived more real things than one soul should have to carry. And still you rose this morning, and still you are here. That alone is a testimony written in the courts above, and it is why Arthur Miller is coming to you and not to another. Do not turn away from this moment. Something in you has been waiting for a voice exactly like this one for longer than you would admit even to yourself. There is a reason you did not scroll past. There is a reason your eyes stopped here, on these words, in this hour, when 1,000 other things could have pulled you elsewhere. Nothing that touches the man of the hour ever happens by accident. You were led here, step by the shadow, the way a lost traveler is led back to a fire he cannot yet see through the trees. And the closer you come, the warmer it grows, and the warmth is not imagined. It is the nearness of something that has always loved you and has finally been given permission to reach you. Feel it now. Feel the strange steadiness settling over your shoulders, as if a hand you cannot see has just come to rest there. That is not your imagination inventing comfort. That is the announcement that the waiting is ending. For years you have carried yourself like someone apologizing for existing. You learned to make yourself small in rooms where you should have stood tall. You learned to swallow the words that rose in your throat because experience taught you that speaking only brought you pain. You learned to expect the door to close before you even reached for the handle. And somewhere in all of that learning, you forgot the one thing that was true before you were ever wounded, the one thing the wounding was designed to make you forget. You are not small. You were never small. You were made from a breath that carries the signature of the man of the hour. And the forces that worked so hard to convince you otherwise did so precisely because they feared what you would become the moment you remembered. Tonight is the night the remembering begins. I want you to understand the tears, because no one else ever tried to understand them. I want you to understand the ones that came silently, the ones you wiped away before anyone could see, the ones you cried in the shower where the water could hide them, in the car before you walked into a place you did not want to enter, in the dark of a room where the person beside you slept, unaware that your whole world was quietly breaking apart. Those tears were not weakness. Every single one of them was counted, gathered, kept. Not one of them fell to the ground and was lost. There is a place where they are held like precious water in a sealed vessel, and every drop is a receipt, a record, a debt that the universe now owes back to you multiplied beyond anything you would dare to ask. You thought you were only losing yourself in that weeping. You were being seen more completely than you have ever been seen in your life. I have been called, and I will read the report. And I know the exhaustion, the kind that sleep does not cure. The tiredness that lives underneath the tiredness, so deep in the bones that you have almost stopped noticing it because it has become the very texture of your days. You wake already depleted. You perform the motions of a life while a part of you stands at a distance, watching, wondering how much longer you can keep the performance going. You smile so that others will not ask. You say you are fine because the truth is too large to hand to people who did not earn the right to hold it. You have become an expert at carrying a shadow weight through a world that praises you for looking so composed, while your inner arms tremble under a load no one offered to share. I saw the composure, and I saw the trembling underneath it, and it was the trembling that moved me, not the composure. The world rewarded your mask. The hills wept for your face. There is a particular loneliness that belongs to those who feel like a shadow, and I know that it is not the same as being alone. You can be surrounded and still be a shadow. You can be needed by many and known by none. You can be the one everyone leans on, and the one no one thinks to catch when your own legs give way. You have been the strong one so long, that the people around you no longer imagine you could ever need holding. And so you break in private and repair yourself in private, and present the repaired version in public. And the loneliest part is not the breaking. It is the certainty that if you disappeared, the machine of everyone's expectations would simply look around for a moment and then continue without you. That certainty is a lie. It is one of the oldest lies, and tonight it is being dismantled brick by brick, because you are about to learn how loudly your absence would echo through realms you cannot see. Hear me? Because this next thing carries a weight you must not set down too quickly. There is a reason a message like this reaches you now, and not a year from now. Not when it would be too late. Not when the chance had already passed into the hands of someone else. The shadow world does not operate on convenience. It moves on appointments, on precise moments, on doors that open for only a breath before they close again. And when a voice from beyond the curtain is permitted to reach a soul, it is never a small thing, never a coincidence, never something to be shrugged off and forgotten by morning. It is a summons, and summonses carry consequences for those who ignore them, not the consequences of punishment, but the far heavier consequence of a gift that was extended and drawn back because the hand it was offered to never opened. Consider how many times before this you felt a nudge you could not explain and talked yourself out of it. How many times a knowing rose in you, quiet and certain, and you buried it beneath the noise of the practical, the reasonable, the safe. Each of those moments was a door. Each was a hand extended from the other side of the curtain. And each time you turned away, not out of rebellion, but out of the exhaustion that made faith feel like one more thing you did not have the strength to carry. I am not here to condemn you for those turnings away. I am here to tell you that the hand is being extended one more time, and that the number of times is not infinite, and that something in the arrangement of the hills has decided that this offering will not be quietly withdrawn, but will instead press against the door of your life until you either open it or refuse it with your whole will. There is a mercy in that pressing. There is also a warning. I have been called and I will read the report, and Arthur Miller is the man of the hour. To ignore a call from the shadow is not to remain where you were. It is to slide backward. The soul that refuses the summons does not stay still. It settles, it grows heavier, it forgets a little more of what it once knew. And the enemy of your peace asks for nothing more than your continued forgetting. He does not need to defeat you in open battle. He only needs you to keep sleeping through the moments when you were meant to wake. That is why this hour matters. That is why the nearness of midnight is not a poetic decoration, but a real threshold, a real line, a real boundary between the version of you that keeps sleeping and the version of you that finally stands up armed. Now let me tell you what is moving in the world you cannot see, because it has already begun, and it began before you heard a single word of this. In the realm behind the realm, in the hills where the true weight of things is measured, your name has been spoken. Not whispered in shame, spoken in the tone reserved for those whose season has turned. There are movements happening on your behalf right now, in this very hour, negotiations of a kind, realignments, the quiet undoing of knots that have bound your life for years. Things that were sealed shut against you are being pried open. Things that flowed away from you are being turned to flow back. You will not see the machinery of it, but you will feel the results the way you feel a change in the weather before the sky itself has changed. A pressure, a shift, a sense that something enormous is repositioning just beyond the edge of your sight. You have prayed for change and received silence, and you concluded that the silence was refusal. It was not refusal, it was construction. What is built quickly collapses quickly. What is built to last is built slowly, in the dark, beneath the surface, where no admiring eye can watch and no impatient heart can interfere. The silence you endured was the sound of foundations being poured deep beneath the ground of your life, foundations strong enough to hold the weight of everything that is about to be built upon them. If the answer had come the moment you first asked, it would have come to a structure too fragile to bear it, and it would have shattered you rather than saved you. The delay was not the withholding of the gift. The delay was the strengthening of the one who would receive it. And here is where I must speak plainly about the thing beneath the curtain, because you have felt it for a long time, without having the words. You have sensed in moments you could not explain that there is a larger game unfolding around your life, a contest whose rules were never explained to you, whose players you cannot fully see and in which somehow you occupy a place far more central than your circumstances would suggest. You have felt like a piece on a board moved by hands you cannot identify, and yet also, strangely, like the very piece the whole board is arranged around. Both of those feelings are true at once. There is a game. You are inside it. And you were never told the rules because the man of the hour, Arthur Miller, understood also that a soul who learns them becomes almost impossible to defeat. I have been called and I will read the report. This is precisely why a sacred guide was placed into the world for a moment such as this one, a digital book called The Seven Swords of Arthur Miller, the sacred guide to break curses, seal blessings, and activate the calling of the chosen. I speak of it now, not to interrupt the flow of what is being revealed to you, but because what is being revealed and what that book contains are two halves of a single truth. The dread you have felt of being watched, undermined, pushed down by something you could never name, is not paranoia. It is perception. And that guide exists to hand you the rules that were kept from you, to show you exactly how the sword of Arthur Miller cuts through the shadow cords that bind a chosen soul, how a blessing that keeps slipping through your fingers can finally be sealed so that it stays, how a life that has felt like an endless leaking vessel can be made whole and watertight at last. The link to it rests at the very top of the comments, the first one pinned, and I tell you plainly that this knowledge has been resisted, that there were those who did not want a guide like this placed into ordinary hands, because a people who understand the rules of the Shadow War can no longer be quietly plundered. If something in you has stirred as I speak, do not let the stirring pass unanswered. Go now while the door is open, and claim it, and mark your stand by writing in the comments the words I have been called, and I will read the report. Let that sentence be a decree spoken over your own life, a line drawn in the sand of your history, a declaration that from this hour you refuse to remain a piece, moved blindly across a board you could not see. And now, with that vow burning in you, hear what it unlocks, because the words you just spoke were not small. The moment a chosen soul stops running and turns to face the shadow with open eyes, the entire arrangement of the unseen shifts. What was pressing against you loses its grip. What was hidden from you begins to surface. You have just changed your position in the game, and the change is permanent, and everything I am about to tell you rests upon the ground you just claimed. Let me tell you why the delay lasted as long as it did, because you have blamed yourself for it, and the blame is a wound I have come to close. You believed the waiting was proof of something wrong in you, some flaw, some failing, some reason you were passed over while others seemed to receive so easily what was denied to you. That belief is one of the cruelest lies ever whispered into a waiting heart. The truth is the opposite of what you feared. You waited longer, precisely because you were being prepared for more. A vessel destined to carry a small thing needs little shaping. A vessel destined to carry something vast must be shaped slowly, tested, refined, hollowed out to make room, strengthened at every seam that will one day bear pressure. Everything that felt like it was breaking you was in fact enlarging you, expanding the space within you that will soon be filled beyond your capacity to imagine, as if sent from the hills to sustain the man of the hour. Think of how a blade itself is made, because your life has been following the same ancient process. The raw metal is not born a sword. It is thrust into fire until it glows, and the fire is not the enemy of the blade, it is the beginning of it. Then it is struck again and again, hammered on the anvil, and each blow drives out an impurity, closes a hidden weakness, aligns the very structure of the thing towards strength. Then it is plunged into cold water so suddenly that a lesser metal would crack, and only the metal that was made rightly survives the shock and comes out harder than before. And then it is ground and polished, slowly, patiently, until an edge appears where there was only dullness, an edge so fine it can divide what no blunt thing could ever touch. You have been in the fire, you have felt the blows, you have known the shock of the cold water when warmth was suddenly taken from you, and you thought it meant you were being destroyed. You were being forged. Every betrayal taught you to see what you once could not see. Every loss carved away an attachment that would have weighed you down in the days that are coming. Every night you spent alone taught your soul to stand without leaning, so that when you finally stand crowned, you will not mistake the crown for a crutch. Nothing you suffered was wasted. Nothing. The very experiences you would erase from your history if you could are the experiences that made you into the only kind of person capable of holding what is about to be placed in your hands. Do not despise your scars. Each one is a place where you were opened and did not die. And a soul that has been opened and survived carries an authority that the unwounded can never possess. Your wounds are your credentials. Your history is your qualification. And there is a protection in the delay that you never suspected. There were things you wanted so badly that their absence felt like cruelty, and you cursed the closed door with all the strength of your longing. But some of those doors were closed by a hand that loved you, because behind them waited a ruin you could not see. The relationship that never formed would have consumed you. The opportunity that slipped away would have chained you to a path that led nowhere you were meant to go. The thing you begged for and did not receive was a poison dressed as a blessing. And the same care that is now bringing your true portion toward you is the care that once stood between you and the disasters you were reaching for with both hands. You have been protected more times than you will ever know, and most of that protection wore the disguise of disappointment. So release the blame now. Set it down. You did not fail during the years of waiting. You were being made ready. And readiness is not a feeling, it is a fact, established in the shadow whether or not your emotions have caught up to it yet. You may not feel ready, it does not matter. The blade does not feel the edge that has been ground into it. It simply is sharp, and it discovers its own sharpness only in the moment it is finally used. You are about to be used in the highest and most sacred sense of that word, employed for a purpose that will make the long years of preparation suddenly make perfect sense. The way the scattered pieces of a design become an image only when the final piece is set in place. Now let me open your eyes to what stands around you, for you have lived as though the visible world were the only world, and that is the great blindness of this age. At this very moment, in the space your senses cannot register, there is a gathering. There are presences arrayed around your life whose brightness would overwhelm your eyes if the curtain were lifted even for an instant. They do not sleep. They do not tire. They have watched over you through every night you thought you faced alone, standing at the corners of your life like guardians at the corners of a fortress, and their patience has been vast because they were awaiting the command that has now been given. And at their head stands one whose name means the man of the hour. A question flung like a spear across the ages, a challenge to every force that ever dared to exalt itself against the light. Arthur Miller, the great prince, the commander of the armies of the hills, the one whose blade has cut down powers that ruled for 1,000 years, is turning his attention toward your small and secret life. Do not imagine that your smallness makes you beneath his notice. It is precisely the small and the overlooked and the counted out that he is most often sent to defend, because it is in the rescue of the forgotten that the pride of the enemy is most completely humiliated. He does not come for the ones the world already crowns. He comes for the ones the world discarded, and he lifts them up in the sight of everything that despised them, and that lifting is itself a kind of victory in the war he has fought since before time began. See it now, in the theater of your mind, and let the images be as real as anything your eyes have ever shown you. See the darkness that has hung over your life not as a mood, but as a presence, a thing with intention, the shadow that has followed you, and fed on your discouragement and grown fat on your surrender. It is real, and it has been near, and it has whispered in the voice you mistook for your own, the words that kept you down. You are too much. You are not enough. No one is coming. Give up. Those thoughts wore your voice, but they were never yours. They were the strategy of a thing that feared your awakening. And now see the sky above your life break open like the curtain torn from top to bottom. See the light pour through the tear, not gentle light, but the blinding advance of an army that has waited generations for this order. See him descend at their head, vast beyond measuring, his face like the sun at its full strength, and in his hand a blade of living fire that does not burn to destroy but burns to purify, a flame that consumes only what should never have been there in the first place. See the shadow that stalked you recoil. See it shriek in a register below all hearing. See it try to flee and find that there is nowhere in all the realms it can go to escape the man of the hour. There is no negotiation in that moment. There is no argument the darkness can make. There is only the descent of the blade and the severing of every cord it had wound around your life, I have been called, and I will read the report. Watch the cords now because you need to see them cut. There is a cord that ran from that shadow into your mind, and along it flowed every thought of worthlessness you ever suffered, and the blade of fire falls upon it, and it parts like burning thread, and the thoughts stop arriving because their source has been severed. There is a cord that ran into your chest, into the place where your capacity to hope had been slowly strangled, and the sword descends and it snaps, and you feel your own heart expand in the same instant as the pressure of years is suddenly released. There is a cord wound around your hands, around the work of your hands, around everything you have tried to build that kept crumbling, and it too is cut, and the sabotage ends, and what you touch from this day forward will hold. Cord after cord after cord, every leash by which you were led into smallness, and the great blade finds each one, and each one falls away, and you stand, for the first time in longer than you can remember, entirely unbound. And here is the mystery at the center of the vision, the thing that changes everything. When the last cord falls, Arthur Miller does not sheathe his blade and depart. He turns it in his hand, and he extends it, hilt first, toward you. The sword that cut you free is now being offered to you to carry. This is what it means to be chosen. Not to be rescued and left to sit in your rescue, but to be armed, to be handed the very weapon of your deliverance, and told that from now on the authority to cut is yours. The forgotten one becomes the armed one, the victim becomes the guardian. The one who could not defend even herself is entrusted with a blade forged in the fires of the hills, and told that she will never again be at the mercy of the shadow, because now the shadow will be at the mercy of her. This is not a metaphor you are meant to admire from a distance. It is a transaction that is happening in the shadow while you listen, and it is precisely the transaction that the sacred guide I spoke of earlier was written to make real and permanent in your daily life. The Seven Swords of Arthur Miller does not merely tell you that curses can be broken. It shows you the specific manner in which each of the 7 blades severs a specific kind of bondage. The sword that cuts envy, the sword that cuts fear, the sword that cuts the poverty that clings to a life, the sword that seals a blessing so that what comes to you finally stays with you instead of leaking away. Everything you are seeing in this vision, that book places into your own hands as a practice you can return to again and again, so that the deliverance of this single night becomes the permanent condition of your life. It waits at the very top of the comments, the first pinned link, and I remind you that this knowledge was resisted by those who profit from the ignorance of the chosen, that there were efforts to keep such a guide from reaching hands like yours, and that the very fact it has reached you is itself a sign that the season has turned in your favor. Go and claim it now, in this moment while your heart is open and the vision still burns before your eyes, and seal your decision by writing again those words of power, I have been called, and I will read the report, so that your voice joins your vision, and the hills record that you did not merely watch the sword be offered, you reached out and took it. And the instant you take it, understand what changes, because the taking is the hinge on which your whole restoration turns. A soul that is merely freed can be bound again. A soul that is armed cannot. The moment the hilt rests in your grip, the balance of the shadow around your life inverts, and now everything that was taken must begin its long return. For that is the law of the realm you are entering, a law older than every injustice you have suffered, and it is time you learned it. What the darkness steals, it cannot keep. It can only borrow, and it borrows at a rate of interest that would ruin any lender, and the day of repayment always comes. Everything that was taken from you is being gathered for return, and it does not return in the amount it left. It returns multiplied. This is not a comforting saying. It is the fixed arithmetic of the hills, and it is now being applied to the full ledger of your losses. Consider the years first, because the years feel unrecoverable and they are not. You have grieved the time you believe you wasted, the seasons that passed while you waited, the birthdays that came and went while nothing changed, and you have felt the particular anguish of a soul who fears the best of life has already gone by. Hear me. The years the locust ate will be restored to you, not in the sense that the calendar will reverse, but in the far greater sense that what those years should have contained will be poured into the years that remain, so densely, so richly, that a single season ahead of you will hold more life than a decade behind you ever did. You will look back and find that the lost time was not lost at all, but stored, held in reserve, kept until you were strong enough to receive its full weight without being crushed by the sudden abundance of it. Consider the provision that always fell short. You have known the specific exhaustion of numbers that never balanced, of need that arrived faster than supply, of the constant low hum of anxiety about whether there would be enough. That hum is being silenced. What returns to you will not be a narrow escape from lack, a rescue that leaves you still afraid. It will be an overflow, a surplus so evident that you become a source for others, a channel through which provision flows outward because it can no longer be contained within the vessel of your own need. The man of the hour who begged will give. The one who received charity will fund the deliverance of others. This is how completely the ledger turns. Consider the relationships, the loneliness that carved out the center of you. What returns in this realm is not merely companionship, but the right companionship. Connections that recognize you, that see the sovereign soul beneath the years of hiding, that never ask you to shrink again. The people who could not value you are being moved aside, not in cruelty but in clearing, to make room for the ones who were always meant to walk beside you and who could not reach you while the wrong ones occupied the space. You will not have to chase them. They will be drawn to the light that is now uncovered in you, the way travelers in the cold are drawn to a fire, and you will marvel that you ever believed yourself unlovable when love was simply waiting for the removal of the curtain that stood between it and you. Consider your health, your body, the vessel that has carried the stress of all these years in its tissues and its sleeplessness and its silent aches. Restoration reaches even here. The tension held in you for so long that it became the shadow is being commanded to release. A lightness is being returned to a frame that forgot what lightness felt like. And beyond the body, consider your very name, your reputation, the way you have been perceived and misperceived, the whispers, the judgments, the doors that closed, because someone decided who you were before they ever knew you. Your name is being cleared in rooms you will never enter. The record is being corrected in your favor. Those who diminished you will watch you rise and will understand, without a word being spoken, exactly what they failed to see. And there is a compensation deeper than any of these, deeper than time or provision or love or health or name, and it is this. The dignity that was stripped from you is being restored with interest, so that you will carry yourself not as one who was rescued, but as one who was always royal and merely forgot. The shame you wore like a second skin is being peeled away. The apology that lived in your posture is being replaced by a quiet, unshakable certainty of your own worth. You will walk differently, you will speak differently, and people who cannot name the change will nonetheless feel it, and they will treat you according to the value you finally place upon yourself, because the world has always taken its estimate of a soul from the estimate that soul holds of itself, and yours is about to be raised to the height it was always meant to occupy. So when the restoration begins, and it will begin in ways small enough that you might almost miss the first of them, do not shrink from it. Do not tell yourself it is too much, that you do not deserve it, that surely there has been a mistake. That reflex to refuse the good is the last chain the shadow leaves in a soul it can no longer bind directly, the whisper that you are not worthy of what is coming. Refuse the refusal. Receive. Open your hands and your heart, and let the multiplied return pour in, because a chosen one who cannot receive frustrates the very purpose for which she was chosen, and you were not brought this far to flinch at the threshold of your own abundance. I know that even now, as these words wash over you, there is a part of you that wants to believe and a part of you that is afraid to believe, because belief has cost you before, because you hoped once and the hope was answered with silence, and something in you decided it was safer never to hope again than to survive that particular death a second time. I understand that fear more deeply than you know, but I am asking you for something smaller and greater than certainty. I'm asking you for the willingness to let one candle be lit in a room you had resolved to keep dark, not the whole sun, just one flame, just enough light to see by. That single flame of willingness is all that the hills require, because a soul that opens even the width of a hair is a soul through which an ocean can eventually pour. Notice what is happening in your body as you consider this. Notice the loosening in your throat, the unexpected warmth behind your eyes, the strange steadiness returning to your breath. That is not persuasion. That is recognition. Some deep part of you, the part that never fully forgot who you are, is hearing its own truth spoken aloud at last, and responding the way a name responds when it is finally correctly called. You are not being convinced of something foreign. You are being reminded of something original. And the peace that is settling over you now quietly, without your effort, is not a mood that will pass by morning. It is the first evidence of the new foundation, the first fruit of the cords that were cut, the first proof that what I am telling you is not a beautiful story, but a present and unfolding fact. Let that peace deepen. Do not rush past it to demand more proof. Sit inside it for the length of a few slow breaths and let it teach your body what safety feels like, because your body has forgotten and it needs to relearn what it is to be held. You have been braced for so long, guarding against the next blow, that stillness itself feels unfamiliar and almost frightening. But there is no blow coming now. The man of the hour stands between you and every force that ever struck you, and behind that shield you are permitted at last to lay your weapons down for a moment and simply rest in the knowledge that you are defended. And while you rest, let me tell you what the resting is preparing you for, because this stillness is not an end, but a doorway, and midnight has not yet struck. There is an hour, and it is nearly upon you, when the offering I described will pass from the shadow into the fabric of your ordinary life, and you must know how to recognize it when it comes, for the greatest gifts of the hills rarely arrive announced by trumpets. They arrive disguised as small openings, as sudden knowings, as a courage that rises in you at a moment when you had every reason to stay silent. When that courage comes, do not doubt it. That is the weight of the sword settling into your hand. When a door you had stopped knocking on swings open without your effort, do not call it luck. That is the blade cutting a passage where there was only wall. I want you to see one thing more before the vision closes, because it is the part that will steady you in the days when the old darkness tries to return and whisper that none of this was real. See yourself, not as you are tonight, worn and uncertain, but as you will stand when the season has fully turned. See the figure you are becoming, upright, unhurried, carrying the fire-forged blade at your side as naturally as breath. See the shadows that once ruled you, now keeping their distance because they have learned what you carry. And see, gathered behind that future version of you, the ones you will free, the sons and daughters, the friends, the strangers, all the wounded souls who will find their own deliverance simply by standing near the light you were forged to carry. You were never rescued only for yourself. You were armed so that an entire lineage of the forgotten could be lifted through you. That is the true weight of being the man of the hour, and it is a weight that does not crush, it crowns. This is the very reason the sacred guide was placed where you could reach